Hello YouTube and welcome to another episode of The Cloudy Vape. In this video we're going to be doing a build on the Goblin RTA by UD Technologies. Before we dive down and do this build, I just want to give out a few words of caution. Sub-ohm is at your own risk. Definitely understand what's going on. Do your research, understand Ohm's Law, battery safety, all that good stuff. I'll put a couple links in the description box below to Ohm's Law, battery safety, also Ohm's Law calculator, and just different resources before you get started doing this. But this is going to be a 0.5 ohm build, roughly 0.5 ohms. This is going to be kind of rivaling your Aspire sub-tanks, you know, your Kinger sub-tank, Aspire sub-tank. You got the Delta sub-tank coming out. I think Smoke has one too. So you have all these sub-tanks coming out with 0.5 ohm coils. So I thought I would show you how to do a 0.5 ohm coil that would work on the majority of regulated devices that work with other sub-tanks. I'll also give you a few tips on how to lower it down, use different gauge wire. This video we're going to be using some 26 gauge wire, but if you want to go a little bit lower, definitely follow along with the same exact build using 24 gauge wire. That'll sit you anywhere between 0.2 and 0.3, but again, if you're going to be building that low, definitely know what you're doing and make sure you have a device that can actually run that. Your basic DNA 30s or your 30 watt devices will not run under 0.5. So this is just something to think about. If you're going to be running lower than that, make sure you have a higher wattage device, or if you have a mech mod or anything like that, that'll run these lower builds. But if you're just trying to run a 0.5 ohm build, definitely a 30 watt device will work pretty well. So just definitely keep that in mind before we get started. But without more yapping, let's just dive down and start building. Alright, so the first thing you're going to need to start building, of course you're going to need the Goblin. If you have the outdated screws from the first version of the Goblin, definitely contact whoever you purchase it from or contact UD directly about getting these updated screws. I know the older screws had issues with not working with lower gauge wire. So if that's if that's the issue you're having, definitely check out whoever you got it from or contact UD. You're also going to need some clippers. These precision clippers work really well. This is what I use the majority of the time, so definitely have some clippers on hand. You're also going to want a Phillips head screwdriver. You're also going to want a 3/32 size drill bit or micro screwdriver or a 2.5 millimeter wrap, anything that it's about 2.5 millimeters, 3/32. That's what you're going to want to wrap it on. So for today, I'm going to be using some 26 gauge kanthal. I'm going to cut off about 1.5 foot piece of it. So let's look real quickly at this before we start wrapping the coil. This is 26 gauge. This is 10 wraps. So what we got here is we have our lead on the bottom going into our negative and our lead on the top going into the positive. That actually helps for just positioning. So make sure you're not putting that higher lead, if that's making sense. Basically you see this one's wrapping towards the bottom, this one's wrapping and comes up towards the top. You want the higher lead when you lay the coil horizontal. The higher lead should be on the positive, the lower lead should be on the negative. If you switch it up, you'll kind of bend the wire, so make sure you do that. Once you do that, it's going to fit nice and smooth in there, and you'll have no issues. So definitely consider that before you start wrapping. Make sure you're wrapping it properly. So without more yapping, let's go ahead and wrap one, and I'll show you what I did. So starting off, I'm using my right hand to hold on to the screwdriver or whatever you're wrapping on, and I'm going to wrap over the top and under. So that'll make your first lead be on the top, then your last lead will be on the bottom, or however you position it. I hope I'm making sense with this, but basically just get a nice first wrap on it, and we want to wrap 10 wraps on this, so let's get going. So there you go, there's your 10 wraps of 26 gauge kanthal. So while you're holding on to this coil, if you're facing the leads away from you, you want the left lead to be bent out slightly. Your left lead is going to be your negative lead, and the straight lead will be your positive lead. This bending out right here helps position the coil into the center of the deck, so just keep that in mind. As I always mention with these dual positive decks, you want to stagger the positive and negative connections. So let me put one in here and show you what I mean. Basically, you want to just skip one positive connection and then go straight into the opposite positive connection. So if you see just like this, that's where the first coil should be going in, into the opposite positive, into the negative, and then we bent out that negative connection, so it just gives it a nice bend, and it gives us a little bit of wiggle room right there. So all you got to do now is just push it all the way up against the deck, hold it up against the deck, don't move it around any, and then all you have to do is just tighten down your positive and negative respective posts. So let's go ahead and hold this coil up against the deck. Actually, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and grab that screwdriver and I will just put it in there to keep it stable. Now what I'm going to do is just push it up against the deck, hold my finger there, and then tighten down these positive and negative connections. Alright, now that we got that tightened down up against that deck, what I want to do is put the screwdriver back in it and just kind of push the screwdriver over. So now just using the edge of the screwdriver, I just gave it a little push to center that coil right at the center of that block. That's about where I want it. So that's your first one. You also want to have it just a little bit lower than the actual holes right there so you can get your next lead out. You can also cut it to exact size if you like, and I can show you how to do that. But that's basically how you want your first coil, just nice and straight. The few things you want to note is you don't want it out too far, because it'll hit the shell when you try to screw it down in that top shell. So just make sure you have room. There's just a nice little bit of room. It is a little tight in there, but it'll give you just enough room to put some cotton in, and also to get that shell and chimney back on the deck. So before we put in the next coil, let's make sure we clip these leads behind here. Alright, those leads are clipped. Now let's go ahead and put in the next coil. Just make sure when you're inserting this next coil that you don't push into this coil. You want to just go right above that coil. So as you put it in, let's do our bent lead into our negative, and our positive one is the higher one. Now if you look right here, it's just going to slide right above. That is going to slide right above there. The positive lead is going to slide right above that coil. So just like we did with the last one, let's put our screwdriver back in here. So as you can see, all I'm doing is holding this coil up against the deck. Now all we got to do is tighten down the respective positive and negative connection. Now what we did with the other one, let's do the same thing. All we want to do is just push that coil to the side a little bit. Make sure it lines up with the positive block. That's about good. Now we just want to get it up and down a little bit straighter. Alright, there we go. So that's what it should look like. Let's go ahead and clip the leads real quick, and then we'll adjust it just a little bit more. The cool thing about these precision clippers, you can get right behind this coil and clip that lead without disturbing the coil itself. So that's all I'm going to do is just reach back there, make sure I get the lead and not the coil. I'm just going to clip it. One other thing to do is just put this barrel back on here before we start wicking it, and just have a look. Make sure the coil's not touching the outer shell of this barrel. Also, like I said, make sure the coil's not touching the positive connection or the negative connection. It should just be slightly floating on air, just doing its own thing. Just don't let it touch anything else. So before we start wicking this, let's look at what the ohms read at. It's at 0.55. So it's roughly at 0.5 ohms, 0.55, but I'll take it. Alright, so I have this on the Sakeli 100. It's firing at about 25 watts. And all we're going to do is just pulse it a little bit. You can do like Trevor Jones and strum it if you want. So just give it a little strum on each side. You also just put the drill bit inside of it, give it a little wiggle, just a tiny little wiggle. Or a screwdriver rather, not drill bit. Come on, here we go. Alright, so just a little wiggle on it and see how it fires up. Nice and even on both sides. Perfect. It's exactly what I want. For this, I'm going to be using some organic Japanese cotton. I'm just going to cut about a quarter inch piece, and we'll just use one strip that's a quarter inch. So let's go ahead and cut this. Alright, so here you go. Here's your piece. This is pretty much all you need. Usually with this cotton, there'll be a little liner on the front and back, so just make sure you peel off that little liner part. There we go. That's off. Let's peel off the other one. Alright, so once you remove the liner, there's a little thin liner on the front and back. You can leave it on. It just helps a little bit, wicks a little bit better if you remove the front and back liner. So just go ahead and take the strip that you just cut and just roll points into it. That's all you got to do. Make sure you don't disturb the center too much. Just roll nice little points. So there you go. You got a point right there. Got a point right there. Try your best not to touch the center right here. And then all you have to do is just cut this right in half. So I already put one piece of cotton on this side. I'm just going to feed this other one right through. Nothing really major with feeding this cotton. Just get it nice and even on both sides. Whatever side has the point, give it a little fluff. That's all you got to do right there. So there's your cotton just like that. Now all you got to do is clip it. Let me just clip it for you and then show you what I did. That's a little bit easier than, clipping it and showing you at the same time. So let me clip it real quick and then I'll show you exactly what I did and how close I clipped it to the deck. All I did was line up the cutters right up against the deck right there and just cut it nice and straight across. So it should look like that. You should have a little bit of cotton sticking out, but you don't want too much. You definitely, less is more with this. And now all you want to do is just look at your juice channels, and you want to feather like a third of the bottom of it into the channel. So I'll just grab some kanthal or a micro screwdriver, whatever you want to grab. I'm just going to use some kanthal right now. And all I'm going to do is just take the very bottom of that and then just slightly feed it into that channel. So as you can see, I'm just taking the bottom of this, slightly feeding it into the channel. Not a lot, you just want a little bit of feathering it down. So now if you see all around, all I did was take the very bottom of the cotton, very bottom of the wick, and just feathered it down into the channel. You don't want a lot at all. Really fine strands down there in the channel, and that is about it. That's all the cotton you want in the channel. Now what you want to do is take the top barrel and put it on. Just be really gentle. Now what you want to do, you want to look at all the juice channels. If you see cotton in any of these little pockets right here in the juice pockets, if you see cotton down there, you went too much, you just put a little bit too much in, so definitely take it off, pull out the cotton, and try it again. Now all you need to do is if there's any cotton that kind of fluffed up above the channels, all you want to do is just kind of tuck it down in. Definitely shout out to Trevor Jones. He kind of showed me this method. I was kind of experimenting with this method, but Trevor Jones kind of I guess he came out with it first, at least this method. I was watching his video. So shout out to Trevor Jones. Really love that dude. Awesome guy. And definitely knows a thing or two. So super cool guy. Definitely go check out his channel. I'll put a link in the description box below to his build on this. Because yeah, he definitely has some cool videos. So if you see now, all I did was slightly tuck the cotton down in, just around each channel. I don't want to push it down into the channel really hard. All I'm doing is just slightly pushing it down in. Any of the extra fluff that popped up, all I'm doing is just making sure that the lines or the grain of the cotton is kind of flowing down. That's all I really want to do. I don't want to push it hard, and you don't want to compact it in there. Just slight push. Now all you got to do is just saturate this cotton just a little bit. So I'm just going to use some 60-40 ratio, and I'm just going to drip a little bit in there and just get the cotton going, get it wicking before I actually fill the tank. Now as long as this is saturated, we should be able to fire it up. Make sure there's no shorts, make sure these coils aren't touching the walls. So let's fire it up. Alright, just so you can see the ohm readout, it's staying at 0.5. Now that's good. If it's jumping around, if you have any devices that have, show ohms, if it's jumping around, that means that there's a short in there, that you got an issue going on. So definitely look at the ohms while you're firing it up. Don't just fire blindly, and make sure you're using an ohm reader if you don't have a device that shows ohms. So the rest is pretty basic. Just put your top chimney on, put your glass tank on, put your barrel on, put your airflow control on, whatever you took off, throw it right back on there. Just gonna do this real quickly for you guys. So filling it up is really simple. All you do is unscrew this little bottom screw, take that off. Now what you can do, plug your finger on the drip tip while you're doing this, just to help the air kind of stay in there. And then what will happen is when you let go of the drip tip, that juice will suck into the chamber and into the wick. If you don't hold on to the drip tip and clog it up, if you overfill the tank, like if you fill up too much, what will happen is it could come out of the drip tip. So that's just one thing to think about. But I haven't had the issues. I haven't had that issue on filling it for the first time. It's just after using it for a while. If you do overfill it, you know what I mean? By basically you're putting so much pressure into it that it's trying to find a way to escape. It will escape out of the juice well first, and then it'll escape out of the top. So all you got to do, find where that hole is, just fill it up. Alright, as you can see, I do have a little juice on my finger. I'm not sure if that's just from when I saturated it or if it leaked through. I don't think it leaked through. I think it was just from when I saturated. I'm just going to give a puff on it. I don't taste any gurgly. So I think that was just the juice I saturated, just so you can see. So now this is about full. What you should see after you vape on it, just take a good draw out of it, a couple good draws, and then look at the juice. Hold the tank upright, look at the juice, and you should see a few bubbles coming out. That's the perfect indicator that it's wicking properly. You should be able to take 2 or 3 big draws from it, and then look at it upright, and you should see some bubbles coming out of the tank. So there it is. There's the Goblin build all ready to go. If you have any more questions or if you have any issues building this, definitely comment below or email me at cloudy.vape@gmail.com. So yeah, I'm really excited with this tank. I'm excited with this build. Very simple build to do, and it wicks super well. So let's go back to FaceTime and talk about it just a little bit more. So I'm just going to vape on this. I'm going to do 5 to 10 just straight pulls and see if we get any dry hits, because that's the main thing with these tanks. You don't want a dry hit because that just sucks. So let's have a couple have a couple vapes and see how it goes. There's 3 with no dry hits. So I'm really loving this tank. It's very easy to wick compared to other RTAs, other older version of RTAs, like the Orchid. It's just a little bit easier to wick. You have larger juice channels, which really helps with getting the juice to the wick quick enough, especially if you're building sub-ohm and it's really just drying out the cotton or just pulling a lot of juice fast. It really helps. So I'm really enjoying this build, and I'm enjoying this tank, just period. So there it is. I'm going to wrap up this video, and if you have any questions on this build, or if you need help wicking this, or if you run into any problems, go ahead and comment below or email me at cloudy.vape@gmail.com. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please like it. And if you like my videos in general, please subscribe. And as always, stay classy and keep vaping.